Hi, I'm Greg DeVore here from ScreenSteps, and I'm here with Crystal Kadakia from LCD Group. And today we're going to be talking about learning cluster design. Crystal and her group started doing these workshops 5 years ago, and it eventually grew into a book that was put out a year ago. Is that correct, Crystal?
That's right.
And it's really about rethinking the way we learn in a modern work environment. So, what's the value of an LCD model if you can take the procedures? If we look at all the learning that has to happen inside of an organization, we have procedural learning, we have policies, we have leadership skills, we have communication skills, all those sort of things. If we can remove the need to learn procedures and policies, how does that free us up to invest our brain space in higher level learning? How does the LCD model play into that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. And you hit the nail on the head right there when you said free up space. One of the most common problems or challenges we hear from L&D professionals is that most of their time is basically sucked up by dealing with compliance, regulatory, kind of the annual types of trainings that you have to do, you have to have in place in your organization. And so what they find is that their time becomes limited to develop and design learning experiences for business critical needs, things like the future capabilities an organization wants their talent to be developing. We just don't have time for it because we're constantly updating and creating and making sure and tracking that everyone is in line with our compliance needs. So one of the core challenges I think for L&D that gets alleviated with something like ScreenSteps is that you're saving not only time for the learner, but you're saving time for L&D. And on the learner end, and this is really how it ties into LCD model, is that instead of that once a year check in the box type of a training that might be very far from the moment you need it, something like ScreenSteps, what it does is it allows learners to actually have knowledge that they need available in the moment they need it. And that's a core philosophy of the LCD model, the learning cluster design model. And I can share a little bit more about the actual model itself to give some greater context.
Yeah, talk to us about, we talked about all these different levels of skills and different types of skills. How does the LCD model account for all these? What does it look like in practice?
Yeah. What we really did, my colleague Lisa Owens and I, is we fundamentally went back and examined the assumptions that have historically been made with instructional design models. When you look at our traditional learning theories and our models, they've really, for the last 50 years or so, been based in a fundamental assumption that we're delivering one curricula, one course, one program given a particular learning challenge. And our existing models are great at doing that. They're helping us design one thing and do that really well. Well, that's not how people learn today. When you think about all of those different levels of learning you're talking about, people might learn when things go wrong. They might need to learn more. They need to do more than just learn about things in the first time that, to get more than that first introduction to it. And they need that because they're trying to apply all of this stuff on the job. So fundamentally, our assumption when we're delivering one thing is that it orients us towards a more of a one and done type of approach. Whereas in learning cluster design, we're shifting the entire goal of L&D to say that our new job is to create a set of learning assets, some that you might plan to use and use in a formal sequence, just like in the past, but others that you would use in the moment of learning need, across different ways, times, and places. And so going back to those different levels of learning or different types of topics, think about the kind of work we're all doing today. Those routine, repetitive types of processes, I mean, frankly, a lot of people are worried that that's what's going to be automated, right? More and more of our time as employees, as learners, as talent is really devoted towards those complex capabilities. And those complex capabilities, you don't learn in a one and done style, and you don't learn in an ideal environment. That might be how you learn about it the first time. But what you really need is a cluster of learning assets that will serve you along your learning journey, that will serve you in different situational contexts that come up. And that's what the learning cluster design model helps L&D design, is those types of experiences, because that's not what we're used to designing. We know how to design that one thing very well. We don't know, and we don't have a process to strategically design a set of learning assets. And that's the big difference.
Yeah, I love, as you know, as I've learned more about LCD, the idea of just surrounding the learner with the assets they need, and the contextual part of it. You know, where are they going to consume this? What are they doing when they're going to consume this content? And I love that it gets out of, hey, we're going to put on an event, we're going to have some surveys afterwards to see if people liked it, and instead we're going to look, are we changing behavior? Are we increasing skills? Are we helping grow people? One of the things that I read about in the LCD model are these strategic performance objectives. So can you give us an example of what an SPO might look like and how it might combine different content types, skills, concepts, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, sure. So this is a great question, because not only is LCD model about designing those multiple learning assets in a cluster, but it's about changing on the job behavior. So the LCD model is made up of 5 actions, and the first action is literally called that. It's called the change on the job behavior action. And the main deliverable you're creating in that action is the strategic performance objective. Now, for those of you who have been in L&D for a while, I'm sure you've heard about learning objectives. And of course, we set the goal of our program or our curricula at the beginning of our work. What's different about the learning cluster model is that we want to set a goal for the entire learning cluster. So for that full set of assets, what is our goal going to be? And for us, because we know our end product is delivering these multiple assets across ways, times, and places, we have more confidence that we can actually change behavior back on the job. And so the strategic performance objective is capturing that goal. And so when you start thinking about an on-the-job change goal, what becomes important there is 2 pieces. What's the business pain you're ultimately trying to solve for? And what would you see differently if the learning cluster is a success on a day-to-day level for employees? So our SPO format actually has 2 parts to it. One speaks directly to stakeholders and what they're most interested in, and the other speaks directly to the learners. This is what I would see you doing differently on the job if this worked. So you can imagine, for a time management topic, for example, in the past, our learning objectives might say, at the end of this class, you'll learn the 4 T's of time management. Well, that's great, but what are you going to do with those 4 T's? So in an SPO, not only would we have the class, but we'd have maybe something like ScreenSteps supporting the in the moment needs when someone's trying to manage their calendar, right? We'd have different assets. Maybe we have some bite-sized videos helping. Maybe we have manager conversations as a part of our learning assets, because we know that time management comes down to prioritization. And so you think about those different types of assets, and the goal for that now sounds different. The on-the-job behaviors might sound like, something around going into your calendar and making smarter choices based on this 4T model. So it's really much more about what you would actually see different on a day-to-day level for a learner.
That's fantastic. And I love you're focusing on the end result you want and then working backwards. And we talk a lot with our customers, how are you going to build your training so that it's designed so people succeed when they forget everything that you taught them? Because when they get in front of that calendar, like, I remember they told us something about how to manage my time here, but what does that look like?
Right. And with that particular example, let's be honest, everyone's like, oh, time management. This is a topic that's been around for 100 years. But how many of us look at our calendar and we're just like flabbergasted? And in times of COVID, even more so. And so there is that moment where you still have that freak out, and you need something in that moment that doesn't involve going back and watching a webinar recording from start to finish, or clicking through an e-learning. It's more of that in the moment. What's the need I have and what's there for me to meet that need? And that's not where L&D has played in the past. We haven't had, we've really treated performance support as kind of, I don't know, the ugly stepchild, but it's really, and neuroscience shows this, it's equivalent in importance to that first moment that we are introduced to a concept.
So, as you're looking at this and you've helped organizations deal with kind of this whole spectrum of training, what happens, we know our minds can only absorb so much, and we can only apply so much. What happens when you're able to kind of offload the process training or the procedure training? I no longer have to keep that in my mind. It's available to me right when I need it. How does that impact learners and performance?
Huge. Removing that procedural learning piece from learners is such a huge impact, because in reality, as much as we love SOPs and we love compliance and we love organizing everything into a nice, neat process, the non-ideal happens all the time. And when a person is spending most of their time just trying to remember or learn or follow the steps, they are now paying less attention or having less capacity to deal with whatever's non-ideal in this situation. So if we think about a call center example, and you've got someone on the line and you're trying to troubleshoot through an issue, and you might not know that issue, and you also have the angry customer waiting on the other end, now if you have to hold all of that in your mind, it's different than if in front of you, you have the troubleshooting steps and you know that, okay, that's already there. It's like your script, right? It's already there for me. I can follow along with this, and I can devote my capacity to better customer service skills, which, oh, by the way, might be the actual metric the business is measuring at this, at that point. So now you're able to actually see a shift from employees just doing their job to being able to do the kinds of things, have the capacity for the kinds of things we would describe highly engaged employees being able to do.
Well, that's great. If the people watching this, if they want to learn more about the LCD model, where's the best place for them to go?
I would head to learningclusterdesign.com, and I would really think about, hey, do I want to deliver a set of assets? And what is the possibility of impact for me if I do that? And especially if some of those assets are these kinds of assets that remove that load from learners. So www.learningclusterdesign.com, best place to go.
Great. And if you want to learn more about ScreenSteps, you can go to www.screensteps.com. We are really just designed to make it so you don't have to memorize procedures, you don't have to memorize policies, but you can have them at your fingertips right when you need them to free up all this headspace to do what Crystal's talking about here. So thank you so much, Crystal. This has been great.
Thank you, Greg.